Um, Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always a delight to have you. So today we'll be talking on the topic making the most of your time, making the most out of your time. You know, and this is in a way a, a rep. I'm just sort of going through what we did, the session we had about a few months ago, basically on time management, where we went about talking on the details of time management, the importance of having a to-do list, and the COVID time management matrix, and how we can apply that in our life. So, but today, I was thinking I should, instead of getting into the details and really um, going into the mechanics of time management, I thought to just basically spur us up to realize the importance of time, to look at, say, to what I'll call laws of time management, to principles of time management. And then we end it there. And yeah. So, yes, today we'll be talking on making the most of your time. And don't tell me this slide thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. And really talking about time management, the concept of time management is attributed to value. The concept of time management, why we should, or time management is set on the premise that we have value for our time. Because you see, if we don't treasure time, we won't, if we don't value it, we won't see the need to use it, to appropriately allocate it in our lives. You say you can only treasure what you value. Um, if you if you have the opportunity to, I don't know, ring, to have the cell phone of the president, the Prime Minister of Canada today, and ring him and say, "Hey, can I catch up with you for 30 minutes?" It definitely won't happen because of the value he has for his time. But if you have a maybe an acquaintance or somebody meet on the road and just break them, who's not as important as, or whose time is not as important as that of the prime ministers, um, the, the the person may make that time easily because of, again, the value that is attributed to time. And really, life, the aspect of life is having time as a gift. So life, uh, time is a gift that is given to us in this life. The life we have. If you say somebody has lived for 5 years, has lived for 10 years, or for 50 years for that matter, it is a reflection of the gift that God has given to them. And in fact, when I talk of time, I look at it, the picture that comes to mind is that of a conveyor belt. You know, this belt, you have it in many factories, as it just constantly moves. And what you put in it determines the value that, so it is dependent on what you put on it. It's Then we come to this concept of, you don't give a golden ring, you don't put a golden ring on a pig's nose, because it won't have value. The pig will not have value for that ring. So how we value time is oftentimes reflected in our lives. How we value time is often reflected in our lives. You can see somebody who values time by seeing maybe the productivity, or how productive they are in life, how they schedule their lives, how they respond to emergencies, and to things that are not of significant importance. So we can often see it even in our own lives. And there's this statement I often make, that really in life you can lose money, you can lose health and regain it. If you're extremely obese and you have, say, a chronic condition that is associated with the obesity, you can actually do exercise and regain your life, your health. I beg your pardon. You can lose money, all of your money, and then decide to get a job and acquire more money than you even had before. But when it comes to time passes without any indication, we can't really regain it. We can only manage to make up in a sense, but we can't regain it. The things I missed doing when I was 20, I really can't do them now in the sense of it, I don't know. As a kid, we grew up playing soccer. So if under 10, you play soccer almost on a daily basis. I really can't do that now. If I miss that, I can't do it now for obvious reasons. Life, as time passes in life, there are structural changes that happen. So there are many factors that come into place. And so when we lose the importance of uh, the time that we have, we may do other things later on, but we would not gain this time. It is lost forever. That's the concept that I really like to drill in. Because if we don't see things in this light, then it becomes easy to let time fly by and to just let things go and take things easy. And really, life is, in a sense, life is supposed to be taken easy. But when we talk about time management, it has to do with what we have in us, what we feel like we've been called to do, the things that we feel like we've been putting on the shelf and hoping that someday some magical thing will happen, and then things will suddenly spur up. Um, Really, time just goes, and it is irreplaceable. In fact, like I said, other things are you can regain other things. And so compared to time, you can regain other things, but with time, you don't regain it. That makes time very precious, a very precious commodity, a very precious resource in our lives. And another concept of time is that we can't really save time. You can't save time in the sense of saving it. You can only, again, you can carry out an action that will help you to mitigate loss. But if the time is lost, it's lost. In other words, if it's wasted, it is wasted. We can't save it, but we can manage our time. We can manage our time. That's where the concept of time management comes in. And what it essentially is, it is having control over our time for activities that will cause an increase in efficiency and productivity. Time management basically means living a life that is conscious, that is cognizant, that we are aware of the fact that, okay, I have, maybe take for instance, if I live for 80 years, God willing, in 90 years, then I have 40 years more. What do I do with those 40 years? Can I study medicine for 7 years and then work for another 30 years? You start, when you appreciate the value of time, you begin to plan in accordance with the value that you've attributed to the time. But a man who has no concept of time management will live for the moment and live for the day. And well, again, this is based on the premise that we can do more. There are many things in our lives, and that is true for me. I'm sure it's true for anyone listening to me now. There are many things in our lives that we cannot dunk them like a basketball onto a shelf and keep them there for the day when a volcano will erupt and something magical will happen, and suddenly we will, as we say, have time that we don't have. The concept of I don't have time. I have an internal dislike for it, because I call it the gastric bypass of the mind, where we give ourselves reason that we don't have time, whereas everybody has 24 hours per day. Everybody on earth. It doesn't matter if you're a prime minister or a kid at school. It is 24 hours a day. It is so. What matters then is time management. And why is time management important? The outcome of our lives is determined by how we manage time. Scripture teaches us that we should redeem the time, for the days are evil. Redeem the time, for the days are evil. And time management definitely has rewards and benefits, because if you manage your time appropriately, you won't be stressed. If you see somebody who's super stressed and has a lot of things feels like they have a lot of things to do. If you go dissect it, you probably discover, more often than not, you discover that the person may have issues with time management. Because if we have issues with time management, then everything becomes important and we don't know how to structure them. And then it results in stress. But if we are able to manage our time, again, there will be productivity, there will be efficiency in our own lives, at the workplace, in our relationships with other people, with family. And time management, those who manage time well are able to they are able to live what I call excellent life. And remember, I often talk of the fact that excellence is not perfectionism. To be excellent is to use what you have at optimal level, the best way you can. This is reflected in the Bible in the parable of the talents. The one who had two multiplied it to four. The one who had five multiplied it to 10. It's not 2 to 10. So optimal has to do with what you have in your hands. As God asked Moses, what do you have in your hands? Because it is what you have in your hands that is used. So the benefits of time management is that we operate in excellence. We would make better use of time that is given to us. And oftentimes when we are good at managing time, guess what? We have enough time for fun. We have enough time to do other things. Remember, I said I'll try as much as possible not to get into the details of the mechanics of time management, how to set up a to-do list, the different approaches to it, and like I said, the Covey's matrix. The objective of today's talk is really to bring us to the place where we'll come to the realization of the fact that time management is important. We have to manage our lives. In fact, life management is time management. Or put it the other way around. Time management is life management. The concept of personal time management, that is for my own self and for you and I, the concept of time management is about investment. And it's about investing in managing our time well, investing in the management of our time. Remember, I talked of time management as this conveyor belt. If you see time as this conveyor belt that is constantly moving, time management is how we can appropriately use the belt to convey the aspects of our lives that are necessary. What do we put on it? What don't we put on it? What do we take out? That is the concept of time management. That's in my opinion, that's the best picture of life vis-a-vis time management. And again, on the basics of time management, how we organize our activities will be determined by our priorities. How we organize our activities is determined by our priorities. You can't manage time effectively if you don't have a scheme of things that are important and not important. I said things, but really it applies to relationships. It applies to activities, And so, as I said, I'll talk about what I'll call 2 laws of time management. Not really laws, it's just a fancy word, a fancy way of putting it. But basically, it's what we have to labor for. Because, gold in life, as we've often said, nothing that is precious, nothing that is of value comes set on a table for us. We labor for everything that is of value. That is why a rock if you go outside and pick up a rock, its value is different from gold. That's why gold can be kept in a building and you have military people surrounding it because of the value that is put in it, the labor that has been put to achieve that value, that goal. And so for time management, we have to labor for priorities. I call it the laws of time management. We have to labor for priorities. We have to determine what is more important. if you're going to school or you have a family and you're going to school, how do you manage the two? How do you manage friends versus family and school? And if you do work, how do you manage, how do you juggle all of this? For me, I was often someone who was growing up. I had the benefit of being a very, in a way, very focused. And I say so not out of pride, say I'm very focused, no. But my friends, when I was growing up, my friends would often say that of me, that look, you take it easy in life. But the thing is, I was on average, I was way more serious than the average person within my age range. As a student, I'll be very serious about my exams. And so if that was excellent then as a student. But if I bring that into family, then I'll have an issue with balancing school time, which I'll call hard time, versus family time, which is a soft time to play with kids. So there has to be a transition, and the transition requires priorities. It requires understanding the importance of soft time. If I don't play with my kids now while they are this young, if they turn out to be, or they grow up to be teenagers tomorrow, and then I want to play with them as if they are 5-year-old and 6-year-old, it won't work. And that's the concept of that. That's the point I made when I said we can't really regain time once it's lost, because it just goes. And so we have to labor for priorities, identify what is important, because our priorities determine our time allocation. And just a few points on how to identify our priorities. I thought to throw in these questions. If you want to do something, say, oftentimes for me, I'll ask, why am I doing this? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So what is the goal for it? Because oftentimes when you go to assess the goal, then you determine whether it's a priority or not. I'm a person I tend to be very people oriented. Generally, even before I got married, I was very, very people oriented. So when I want to eat, I'll make sure I have a friend or two people, folks who come when I was studying, folks who come eat at my home. I'll bake and people come and eat. And so if somebody called me and say, hey, there's dinner out, I'll easily just, okay, let's go, just have fun, hang out with people. But I can't do that now again because of where I am at. I needed to identify. If you call me out, first of all, ask, is it necessary for me to drive out just to go hang out? It probably is not as important as it was before. And in asking that question will determine what happens if I don't do it. Will I lose the friendship? Will I lose the whatever is at stake for the situation? This applies to our businesses. This applies to work. We have, for those of us who work, this is very important, especially if you work with multiple projects at a time. You really have to know your priorities. What is more important than the other in order to stay on top of your game. Sometimes it's just asking, it may be very important. You go through the other questions and realize that it is important, but then you have to ask yourself, is this the right time to do it? Because the fact that it's important doesn't mean that it can't be delayed for a later time and other things done now. So these are things that are important that are necessary for us to, or can help us to identify what is more of a priority compared to other things. And again, we can ask, what is the impact of doing it or not doing it? If a friend calls me out for lunch, for instance, a nice lunch at a very nice restaurant, if it's a great opportunity, I may see it as a great opportunity, but what then will I lose if, as in, does my wife does she need me home to help out with something, to stay with the kids, maybe while she runs an errand or while she cooks? And how do I balance that? And I'm just giving these examples where we can apply it in different domains in our lives, different aspects of our lives. And of course, priorities are important because we need to plan. We prioritize because we need to plan. Remember, the essence of this discussion, I said, it's not to give us a to-do list, how to set up a to-do list, but there are many of us who have, maybe you have an idea of writing a book, you have an idea of starting a business, you have an idea of, taking a course, and you've thought about it, and time and again, and you just push it back, and well, the later on I'll do it. The essence of this is to spur us up to craft time, to see the need. Uh, Scripture says, now is the time of salvation, not tomorrow. I will live and live. There's no guarantee for tomorrow. Now, today, the only blessing we have is today. So now is the time. Make use of now, not when I'm 80, or maybe we don't. Most of the time, people who don't plan don't have a picture of when they are 60 or they are 80. They just live on and hope that, well, things will change. And so we know that failing to plan is planning to fail. I mean, if you lived for 10 years, you probably had this already. And if somebody who has a plan can actually change it. So when I talk about time management and planning, this is not something written on a stone or rigid lifestyle. No, no, no. But at least it's having a picture of where we are going, having a picture of what we need to do. In this year, for this year, how many books do I want to write? Do I want to keep writing one book per year? These are questions I ask myself. Or do I want to stretch myself and get at least 2 instead of 1 per year, as I planned last year, or as it has happened in the past few years? These are things that I have to consider. And then how do I get time to write more than 1 book? Can I create a system that helps me to be more efficient at writing? But when I consider all this, at least I'll generate a plan. I already have a plan, then I can change it. But if you don't have a plan, you can't change it, because you don't have a plan. You can only change it if you have it. So it is important for us to consider planning for our lives, for our week, day, months, years. Have a 6-year plan. If again, when I talked about details, when we had this session the first time, I went through the details of, how to do a to-do list, how to do all this mechanics of it. But today, if you've not even considered it, please just ponder over it and have a picture. What do I want to be this 2021 to be like? And really, I'm not implying that we are becoming gods all of a sudden. No, no way. That's not the essence of it. But then Scripture says, without a vision, the people perish. So it is important for us to at least have a vision, a picture of where we are headed for. It may just be something as small as anything. Now I'll go to the next law. It says labor for consistency. Labor for consistency. The first one was labor for priority. Number 2 is labor for consistency. Once you have prioritized and determined that, okay, there's this that I need to do, the next point that I find very important for time management is consistency. Because every productivity can be hinged on consistency. It has been said that life is not a sprint, it is a marathon. What that means is you do it in hoops, you run here and run there and rest and go on and on. It's not a sprint. We produce more, we are more effective our productivity increases when we make small and consistent changes. When we make small, consistent changes. Success does not come from what we do occasionally. There are many of us who have this search. There are many times when we stay, you wake up and you have a lot of energy, you're pumped up, you're ready to run. It happens occasionally. But if we live our lives, if we plan based on that energy level, on the upsurge, the sudden or occasional upsurge in energy, then we won't make it, because it doesn't come often. But if we implement small but consistent steps, that is when we make it. Success does not come from what we do occasionally. It comes from what we do consistently. The power of consistency, there's a lot we can talk about the power of consistency. Jesus, you see, scripture will say Jesus, as his manner was, well, he will wake up and go pray early before it was day done. So he had a consistent pattern. Consistent pattern. One time, scripture records one time of him fasting 40 days and 40 nights, and that's it. But you can't run. He couldn't have. I don't think you can run a ministry. He did not run a ministry based on the 40 days and 40 nights fasting. He ran the ministry based on small, consistent steps. Before it was done, he will wake up. And there are many of us who are caught in this trap. We only operate when we have a high surge in energy, when we have oh, wow, I feel excited about doing this. I put this picture here. I was thinking about it just before we started, and I put this picture because talking about consistency. Consistency reminds me of the termite. If you don't know, the termites are like little ants. How they're able to build a mound, huge mound. This mound is taller than trees. They're able to build huge mounds, in spite of the fact that they are very, very small. How are they able to do it? Not because they have this giant termite amongst them who carry a big brick of mud and go dump it. No, they carry little by little, consistently, little and little and little, and they build it up until it becomes the huge mound that we see. And they are so hard to break. We used to have them when I went back at home, when I went to the farms. They are super hard to break. You can't just hit it even with an axe. The axe will bounce back on you. So effective time management is based on doing small things consistently over time. Psalm 90 says, so teach us to number our days that we may incline our hearts unto wisdom. Teach us to number our days. When you number your days, you will number your year and you will number the rest. It is in doing the little, day by day, one day at a time. Teach us to number our days, that we may incline our hearts unto wisdom. And like I said, the talk today is really, the essence is to encourage us. It has been to encourage us to think about our lives, not from, I have 40 more years guaranteed, but to take today and tomorrow and say, what can I do today that will get me to where I want to be in 10 years? Like I said, many of us have businesses, we have books to write, we have places to visit, we have targets that we have set, even acquisition of wealth. We have all this that has been laid in our hearts. We need to ponder about the steps that are necessary to do it. Don't just put it on the shelf and let it stay there. And it's about how you manage the conveyor belt today. Because accumulation at the end of the conveyor belt is dependent on what you put on it today, daily, as it rolls on. We have many God-given ideas. Do not wait for the day when there will be a sudden bang. We can change our lives by making simple, consistent steps. When I wrote the book, Choices, the first book I wrote, life was busy. We had little kids, wife, amazing as she is, she working and, trying to take care of kids. But it occurred to me once that, instead of driving to work every day, taking to work and back home, it's an hour. Instead of driving, I can take the bus. When I sit in the bus, I'll buy, what do they call it? I'll get a tablet and then use the tablet to just be writing my ideas. And if I do this per week, 7 days, 1 hour per day, in 7 days or in 5 days, that's 5 hours. 5 hours of writing, if you have ideas, is more than enough. That's how I went online and bought a used tablet. I didn't buy a new one, I bought a used one. And today, using that process, I have 3 books that were completed just using, because I was able to identify that time, prioritize it. Because oftentimes when I'll get, before then, I would get into the train and just pick up my phone and call friends and call folks around. But then when I was able to rethink and allocate that time for this purpose, today I have 3 books. And trust me, COVID has not done me good at all when it comes to this. Because now I'm home and, but then I had that time, I had scheduled it, that was it. So it became very productive, very easy for me to write, for me to edit, because I had blocked that time. And again, this is just an example. And we have to look at our lives where we are at. There are many of us who have visions. I've often said on this platform that, you see, it's amazing when you talk to 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds and you find out the little things they ignore that they wish they had done. So I just want to encourage you, don't wait for when there'll be a perfect big bang that you have all this time and then you want to, become the world champion. No, probably more often than not, it doesn't happen. We have to use what we have. It starts with, what do you have in your hands? God bless you. God bless you richly. Thank you so much. I